Welcome to this week's Midweek Meeting Gold on the Witness for Jesus channel, and my name is Dawn. This is for week beginning the 4th of January 2021. This week we look at Leviticus 18 and 19, moral purity, and the very important topic of protecting children. We're also going to look at the timeline of Ezekiel's life and see how that fits with the date for the destruction of Jerusalem. Leviticus 18 and 19 are on moral laws concerning sex and other moral matters. The outline makes the point that we must behave differently than those in the world. But what is the world? Does the phrase the world mean everyone who isn't in our organisation? Everyone outside of a certain denomination, you might say. A good way of Bible study is to look up the word in a concordance. A concordance, as you may know, lets you see that word every time it appears in the Bible. You can find online concordances. Bible Gateway lets you do that. You can just put the word into the search box and see that on screen. Now, world can mean the earth. It can mean creation. It can also mean humans in general. Like in John 3:16, God loved the world so much. Of course, in this context, the world means those who are not Christians, the ones who are subjected to the spirit of the world. In 1 Corinthians 2:12 it says, "Now we received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from God, so that we might know the things that have been kindly given us by God." Those who have the Holy Spirit from God are not part of the spirit of the world. Similarly, Colossians 1:13 says we have been rescued from the domain of darkness and brought into the kingdom of the Son of God. Satan is not ruler of every single thing on earth. Not by any means. He's ruler over his dark domain, the world of people who are not Christians and who are under the spirit of the world, as we just read in 1 Corinthians 2. Being rescued from this dark domain then applies to all Christians who've put faith in Jesus. What does this mean for us? Well, Paul outlined in Romans 14 and in 1 Corinthians chapter 8 and Colossians 2, verses 14 to 16, that there are many things which come down to Christian conscience. We're not under the law anymore, as Galatians 3 points out very clearly. So in what way do we behave differently than the world? Well, since we have the Spirit of God, we act according to God's will, and we should be showing the fruits of the Spirit. So as the outline says, we will not practice sin unrepentantly. There's no need to really discuss the minute details of what we can or cannot do. A Christian who has God's Spirit will be seeking to obey Him, and their heart is changed so that they naturally feel an aversion to sin. Now, don't forget Jesus. I think it's curious that these laws are emphasised so much when in reality Jesus raised the standard. He said, if you look lustfully at a woman, you've committed adultery in your heart. It's just so important to look at all of these Hebrew scripture passages in light of what Jesus said and what we know of him. After all, he revealed the Father to us. Now, in Spiritual Gems, we see the wonderful way that Jehovah ensured that the poor were taken care of by allowing them to take food from the edges of the crop. This is from Leviticus, and it's a brilliant point, and it also reminds us to take care of poor people in practical ways. There's no point giving a starving person a Bible to read. Not really. Yes, everyone needs spiritual food, but Jesus himself asked us to care for the physical needs of others. The Bible even says especially those who do not share our faith. Do you know anyone who needs practical help right now? Someone not part of the congregation. Take seriously Jesus' commands on that, looking after widows, the poor and orphans. Now, of course, I'm giving you extra information here because this week's meeting outline doesn't mention Jesus at all, just like last week. I'm simply saying that these things can be applied to Christians today. It's nice to learn things from the Hebrew Bible, but as Christians we should always look at its application in the light of what we now know about Jesus. We're not Jews, are we? We're not Israelites. As for me personally, I think it's good to make sure that we don't forget Jesus. Someone coming into this meeting this week could mistakenly think that it's Jewish, because Jesus is never mentioned. And all this discussion is going on about the Hebrew Bible. Have a think about that in coming weeks too, and don't forget, you can bring out the points about Jesus yourself, if that's what you want to do. One last point on Leviticus 19 is this verse 16. You must not go around spreading slander among your people. You must not stand up against the life of your fellow man. I am Jehovah. The note in the study Bible says, possibly, you must not stand by when your fellow man's life is endangered. Going back to what we said a couple of weeks ago on blood, this is an important principle. God greatly values human life. Go back to Midweek meeting 28th of December 2020 for a discussion on that, or playlists on this channel for a series on blood. Now to living as Christians, the title Parents Equip Your Children with Knowledge. I must say there's a box linked which lists many articles on the topic of teaching children about sex and educating them about potential sexual abuse, including what they should do if anyone attempts abuse or does abuse them. Are you aware, however, that there is a serious issue inside of the organisation in regard to sexual abuse? All of these articles seem to show that the organisation cares about children and protecting them, and I must say that these articles are really useful. But the issue is something else. This comes from my own research, and I think it's important that Jehovah's Witnesses do not pretend that this is not happening. So I hope you take what I'm about to say as offering helpful information that we should all know about. Put simply, it's the two-witness rule. The governing body has made it very clear that it will stick to what they call the two-witness rule. That is, if there are not two witnesses to abuse, then the congregation will not take action. This has resulted in no action being taken at all by the congregation when they become aware of child abuse. I know you might be thinking that this couldn't happen, but in fact in Australia there was a royal commission which investigated all groups and religions in regard to child sexual abuse, and the Jehovah's Witness organisation was found to have over 1,000 paedophiles on record, actually in their records from the congregations, and of those 1,000 paedophiles not even one had been reported to the police. Of course, there were thousands of victims, as usually an abuser has more than one victim. So why did the elders not report to the police? Because of the two-witness rule. If the abuser denied it and the child is the only witness, action isn't taken against the abuser. Now, of course, since then, the organisation has realised more about this problem, but they still have stuck to the rule, saying that it's from the Bible. They say that the family are told that they can go to the police even if the elders do not. But what about when it's a family member such as a parent who has committed the abuse? What if the elder is the only one who knows? The official policy still today is that the elder must call the branch office, and if it is not mandatory to report in that area of the world, they may still not report to police. Is the two-witness rule scriptural? No. I have a video which examines that teaching in detail, so I'll put that link in the video description. Please watch that and do your own research. Surely the organisation should ensure that child abuse is always reported to the authorities. Why? Because elders are not trained in dealing with child abuse. They're not trained in forensics. They're not trained in questioning. If a child accuses an adult of abuse, the police are equipped to look for physical evidence, forensic physical evidence, to question properly and to ensure the child is safe. This should be carried out as standard, and it should not be the case that the policy is to call the branch rather than calling the police. What I noticed about this week's outline and video is that it does not cover the possibility that the parent is the abuser. There is so much information for parents there to teach children, but what if the parent is the one abusing? Also, it says give age-appropriate information. There seems to be a serious problem with information being given to the children before they're ready for it, because Watchtower articles can contain information which is discussed each week at the meeting when children are present. One of the articles on this list mentions things like anal and oral intercourse, and this would have been discussed in a meeting in front of children, young children. There's a culture of teaching children things here too soon, in my opinion, but in not dealing with the abuse cases properly. Please don't imagine that this video and this article is enough to deal with the problem. The real problem is the two-witness rule and the fact that the abuse is not always reported. But other churches are guilty of this, right? Yes, of course. I looked up these other churches online. The Anglican, the Baptist, the Pentecostal, the Roman Catholic and many other denominations have issued an unreserved apology and begged for forgiveness. They have also joined monetary compensation schemes to compensate victims. But, unfortunately, the JW organisation has never issued such an apology or joined a compensation scheme. They compensate victims only when ordered to do so by a court. Maybe this is something that Jehovah's Witnesses should be bringing up by writing to their branch office. Also, please look up any abusers who are in your area. They could be in your congregation and you may be unaware. The website silentlambs.org has a list of JW convicted abusers. There are no less than 2 convicted abusers in one congregation very local to me. Moving on now to the Congregation Bible Study. Let's move on. There's an interesting introduction to Ezekiel here, putting Ezekiel into his place in history. It gives a timeline of Ezekiel's life. What I noticed is that this timeline doesn't match other sources. So, for instance, the JW.org outline says Ezekiel was born in 643 BCE, whereas all other sources have him born around 20 years earlier. Also, the outline says that his last vision was in 593 BCE, when other sources have his last vision around 570, again around 20 years difference. I discovered that this difference is due to the fact that the JW organisation teaches that Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians in 607 BCE. But in fact, it's strange, all other scholars and historical evidence point to this happening in 587. 587 BCE. It's a 20-year difference. So what is the reality? Okay, there's an abundance of proof. You can look up for yourself, and I strongly advise that you do. For example, there are numerous ways to determine that Jerusalem fell in 587 BCE. This includes Ptolemy's canon, the Nabonidus Chronicle, Haran, Hilostele, and synchronization with Egyptian chronology. The book Records from Erech, Time of Nabonidus, dated from the time, dated at 555 to 538 BC, contains 246 tenates from the temple archives of Erech, showing the level of detail kept during those times and data that's useful in an accurate dating of the time period. And the highly predictable nature of the stars and planets makes astronomical observations invaluable in dating prior events. Babylonians placed great importance on astrology, and the thousands of records uncovered prove precisely the dates for the reign of the Babylonian kings. VAT 4956 provides 30 observations, 5 of which place Nebuchadnezzar's 37th year as 568 to 567 BCE, making this an absolute date. And this is significant because 2 Kings 25, 2 and 8 places the 11th year of King Zedekiah in the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, proving beyond a doubt the date for the fall of Jerusalem. Detailed evidence as well from Assyrian and Babylonian records proving that Jerusalem was destroyed in 587. See the book The Gentile Times Reconsidered. This is really important considering that 607 date forms the basis for the 1914 teaching. I've got a video on 1914, so please click the link in the description for that video. Personally, I find it really useful to test all things, check all things. The governing body has said it is not inspired and it's certainly not perfect. Things have changed with teachings in the past, so we must check all teachings that are current against available evidence, and most especially against the Bible itself. Song 96 is sung at the end of the meeting, and we should consider that God's own book is a treasure and is the foundation of our faith, not teachings of men. Next week, we read about Ezekiel's amazing first vision. Don't forget to comment, please, in the comments section. Click like. And another thing, if you haven't subscribed, please do so for notifications of future videos. YouTube has started offering a new feature where I can see subscribers and those who have commented but not subscribed. You've got nowhere to hide now. Please sub, as it helps grow the channel and reach more people, since YouTube will bring up these videos more for people on YouTube if I've got more subscribers and more likes. Thank you so much. I look forward to all your comments. That's all until next week.